Hi, everyone. I am Amy Trong, your host here on Road to Wellness, the podcast. I'm very excited to be having a conversation with Jennifer today. Jennifer Choi. She's currently in Singapore. I met her recently. Fascinating woman, and can't wait to chat with you, Jen. For you to share a little bit more about yourself with our listeners today.
Hi, everyone. And Amy, thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed meeting you. We met at the UCLA Anderson immersion in Singapore. A little bit about myself. I have been living in Singapore the last 7 years. I've been working at one of the largest tech companies here. I primarily focus in the AI space and government transformation. But I think what's most probably interesting to the listeners is probably about my journey and the dichotomy that I live both as a technology executive, but also as a very seasoned elite cyclist in Singapore. So outside of my day job, I train almost like 20 hours a week, and I have won the elite title in Singapore in 2025 and in 2024. And so that title goes to the person who has accumulated the most points, the GC rider. I won't go into the details about that, but I think the thing that I'm very proud of is the ability to have a strong identity outside of work and then also a strong identity on the bike and the ability to complement both.
Thank you, Jen. I definitely do want to dive into that conversation because I think what I liked and what I heard what you said just now is like having a very clear identity and awareness of who you are, both in the workplace as well as what do you like to do personally. And cycling has been your thing. And I believe you won the yellow jersey. That's what it's called. And the fact that I think were you training for just like 4 years or something like that? And then
Yeah, I'm actually a pandemic cyclist, so I didn't really get into cycling until COVID happened. And I was actually a very big runner. I got injured running. And so that was really the reason why I got into cycling is because I couldn't run anymore. It first started off with me just like taking my bike for a ride along the beach or, with my little beach cruiser, the little basket, very heavy bike. But then I started to notice that when my guy friends invited me to go riding with them, I was like was keeping up with them. And they had these very expensive, super cool carbon bike. If I can keep up with them, maybe I might be good at this. I just decided, hey, why not? Why not give it a try? So
yeah.
that's how I that's how I started.
I like that. I think how sometimes the coolest things that you do in life are things that are accidental, right? And
Yes, totally an accident.
but I think it was a good accident. And it also sounded like to me, we talked offline, but the as an executive, you have a lot of stress, obviously, right? There's a lot of high stakes work that you have to do, especially with AI transformation and government work throughout Southeast Asia. So in the line of road to wellness and integrative health, we talk a lot about body mind connection and utilizing our physical fitness as a way for us to help kind of recuperate the work that our mind has to do. So I'm kind of curious, how has endurance cycling, both physically and mentally, has kind of shaped the way that you lead, or maybe even the way that you think, how you manage your stress, your decision fatigue that you experience in the boardrooms, and generally just how do you show up professionally?
Yeah, I think the my experience on the bike has been a tremendous gift, and I think endurance sports, like cycling, really change our ability to, how do I say, um, endure like hard things.
Yeah.
And because I'm physically putting myself through interval training, that's like, I mean, sometimes I want to throw up because it's so painful. When you start to continue to do things where your body's like, I don't want to do this, but you're able to push through, um, I think it builds this like mental resilience and this capacity to take on challenges in a way that's normally I don't think I would have been able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But because you're like, I mean, I train 6 days a week. I get one rest day. So each day I am training myself to endure. I'm training myself to do difficult things. And what I find is that when somebody asks me to do something difficult at work, the resistance goes down. Like the
Mhm.
resistance to, oh, that's really difficult. I don't want to do it. Like you get a little bit of it, but it becomes less of a barrier because I think your mind and your brain, that tolerance for, okay, this is hard, but I'm going to do it anyway, it's stronger. And I don't think that I'm unique in the sense. When you continually do this hard thing and you continually show up, even if you don't want to, right? Because it's not like I love doing this extremely hard workout. I love the feeling afterwards, but when I know that hey, I'm about to do these like intervals and it's super super hard, I do have to go through this exercise of like, oh, I don't want to do it, but I need to push myself to do it. That is what trains that part of your brain.
Yeah.
But it's like being comfortable with being uncomfortable, right?
Mhm.
And if you stop doing it, it's like a muscle. If you don't continue to use that muscle, then it atrophies, right?
Right.
It's the same thing with this. Is like if you stop, if you get comfortable, and if you don't continuously put yourself in that position where you're slightly uncomfortable. I don't like to use the word uncomfortable. I like to use it as like more like um, you know, you're just getting used to doing hard things.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hard
No,
things on the hard things on the bike, like used to that, then it means to be able to do hard things off the bike, same.
I agree with you 100% because I think with the ecosystem of entrepreneurship, right, having founded companies and all that stuff, I also realized that the moment where I thought that I personally couldn't do something and then actually was able to achieve it was very reaffirming to help me go and take and make bigger risks down the line. So like you mentioned the Huberman lab, and he did talk about that, I believe the anterior mid-cingulate cortex,
Mhm.
that's the part of the brain that gets exercise. So I appreciate you bringing that up. You dabbled a little bit about this topic on having male competitors, right, on the bike. And they have not, I love the guys too, but we're built differently, right? So they have a different stamina, they work differently. From your experience as a female executive in Asia, how have you been able to navigate some of those challenges that you see? Any sort of processing that you want to talk about, both for folks who are working in that corporate life, but then also for those who are competing in endurance sports? Any sort of advice or thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, I think the important distinction is that even though I think this goes on the bike and as well as off the bike. Um, Sometimes when you're doing something at an elite level or a high performance level or um, anything where you're reaching a peak,
Mhm.
right? People are always going to feel threatened by that.
Yep.
Um, and if you shrink, you're actually you're shortchanging yourself, but you're also shortchanging people around you as
Yep.
well. And I
Hmm.
think, um, I don't think that for me personally, I try to not position it as me against anybody
Hmm.
because then it's a negative frame. And I personally find that not very empowering and not very, very helpful. What I try to focus on is the things that I can control. So me competing against myself, me competing against the clock, because the clock is unbiased. If the guys want to compete with me, it's not actually, they shouldn't really be thinking about that. They should really be thinking about, are they competing against the clock?
Hmm.
And if I can do, XYZ and I hit a certain average speed or a certain time, like it's not about me. It's me against the clock and what are the preparations that I've done to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But if I focus on the other guys and what they're doing, it does me no good because fundamentally we're physiologically different.
Right.
They don't have the type of job that I have. They don't
Hmm.
have the type of stress that I have. So fundamentally we are not on the same, you know, we don't even have the same equipment, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I remember when I used to run track and run cross country, like the coaches would also say, like, you focus on your own lane. It doesn't matter if the other athlete has like, the latest, spikes on their, track shoes or better blocks or whatever. Like none of that is going to affect your race.
Right.
You have to run your race. And I think it goes the same thing in a corporate setting. Um, yes, there's always going to be uh, different politics, etc. Um, any desirable job, there will always be politics. But
Hmm.
if you focus too much on what others are doing, then you yourself won't be able to shine. Like,
Yep.
because what your strengths are, what your unique strengths and why they have you, right? Because oftentimes we're trying to hire people that have unique strengths. How do you round out the team? At the end of the day, we're all part of a team. I think the people that do well are the folks that remember that we're all on the same team. The
Hmm.
folks that forget that, I find, usually get managed out eventually, right?
Hmm.
Or they find a different opportunity or whatnot. But remembering that you have your unique strengths, and the more you hunker down on those, I find has been a way to be much more successful. Um, so I guess the bottom line is, even though others try to distract you and make you think that you need to compete with them, remember, no, you're not competing with them. They can create whatever story, whatever narrative. And this also goes for female as well, male or female. It doesn't matter. If
Yeah.
they think that you're competing with them, let them think that. But you know that you're not competing with them.
Yeah.
You know that you're only competing with yourself. And when you do that, I find that that's when you can be most successful because it's
Yeah.
hard about competing against yourself, right?
No, I love that. Very well said. And I think this kind of goes back to a comment I made when I heard you speak with the UCLA Anderson group, which is the inner locus of control versus the external locus of control. When you think of psychology, when you're focused on your inner self and do things that are within your control. So what your thoughts about yourself, what your capabilities are, not thinking about how others are thinking about you and making the external be a factor, you actually do better and heal much faster in whatever challenges that you might face. So I appreciate that thought that you just shared. I'm kind of curious because I think now this kind of dives into a little bit more on the leadership style and the leadership ways of doing things as again being an executive in an Asian markets where the archetypes of how women are supposed to show up maybe a little bit different. When you're thinking about your well-being, a lot of our listeners are high achieving women and they generally have a lot of weight, right? So personal life, mothers taking care of families and then going to work and having to hold this executive level. What do you think, or what would your recommendation or thoughts would be in terms of pacing yourself in your professional life? Have you ever thought about that, like the pacing component? How do you think about the advancements within the workplace? How that also kind of relates with your cycling experience?
I think the more senior that you get, sometimes career management gets a little tricky because there are only so many more roles, like so only
Yeah,
like
that's
how
true.
you go, like the spots are limited, right? So I think part of it is you have to be honest with yourself, like, is staying within the same company the best option for you?
Uh-huh.
Or given that you know that your boss is not going anywhere anytime soon, and that if you plateau, then you really should be looking at what are the other opportunities. I think I remember um, sharing this in the class we were at, but it's really up to you to manage your career, right? It's
Yeah.
not the job of HR to do that for you. Like you are in charge of your career.
Hmm.
Uh, so I really think in terms of pacing, some people are really their goal is to retire as quickly as possible,
Mm.
right? So they want to take on as much as they can, and then it's you need to figure out what is your end goal, right?
Hmm.
Because are you running a marathon? Are you running a 5K? Are you running a 20K?
Yeah.
Right? That's your strategy and your pacing is going to be different for each if depending what your target is,
Yeah.
right? So I think I tend to look at it as I play the long game,
Uh-huh.
right? And in terms of the best advice that I got was from the vice dean of Harvard Business School. When I was graduating, I asked her for advice, and she's such a amazing woman, so wise. And she said, Jen, I want you to remember that in life there's different tours of duty, right? And maybe for one season or for one tour, it might be focusing on your career. Um, and on another end, it might be you might have to focus on your kids for a while. But, that might be another tour. Another tour of duty might be focusing on your parents. They might not be um, doing so well, right? Um, you don't necessarily have to do it all at the same time. And when I hear someone who I look up to so much, and she's had her lived experience, um, I really take that to heart. And I feel like when I look at my friends who have done really well as a proxy, they also have taken a similar approach that what is that season and what is that tour of duty that they're doing right now and how they communicated with their partner. Like right now in this season, they're saying, okay, this is where we're really hunkering down. I might not be able to spend as much time for XYZ, but our goal is that we don't do this forever. But right now, the focus is on the career and the
Yeah.
focus is on the job. And again, it also depends on what kind of job you're in, like what kind of environment you're in. If you're in a startup, like you can't really go on holiday, you can't really go on vacation, like, there's not a lot of people and um, things can really shut down,
Yeah.
right? If you're not available. Maybe you're at a more established company that's been around for 40 plus years, and it's a well-oiled machine. And so there's lots of planning that's been done so that if you go on leave, the company's not going to burn down,
Yeah.
right? So it is very dependent on what kind of environment you are in as well. But I think the more important question is, what do you want? And what are the constraints that you're willing to like I always believe this when I'm developing products in product development for a long time. And I always believe that constraints is the mother of innovation. Like when you know what are the parameters that you're working with, okay, if we're honest about that, then we can work around it, right?
Hmm.
So if the constraints are like you only have X number of hours a day to do XYZ, all right, then let's focus around this
Hmm.
and um, draw inspiration from other people that are also have the same number of 24 hours in a day, but if they're what is it that they are prioritizing, right? So the pacing is it's what is important to you, what do you want to achieve? For me right now it's like I want to crush it in my career and I want to crush it on the bike.
Hmm.
uh, but that also means that it's taken other parts of my life might not be as balanced.
Hmm.
So in terms of my personal life, I'm not married. I don't have kids. That's why I'm able to train so much on the bike, right? But that is an active choice that I've made because it makes me really happy. Would my parents or my aunties in Korea uh, think that that's the wisest choice? Probably not. They
I'm
would be
laughing
like,
because I can relate with you, Jen, because everybody asks me all the time, Amy, how can you do so much? I was like, I don't have I'm not married, I don't have kids, but I can do
yeah,
so much more, right?
yeah.
So,
But it looks your happiness and what makes you glow and makes you shine, it's different for each person. You
yeah,
don't have to live the same cookie cutter life as everybody else.
right.
And I think the sooner people grasp that, I think that's also the definition to me of a modern woman.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think a lot about that. I think a lot about, I don't think I've ever been the traditional type,
Mm-hmm.
but I have felt the pressure to be the traditional type.
Yeah,
And I think what life and wisdom has taught me is that I'm happiest when I'm most authentic and I'm following what brings me joy,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Maybe there are other areas where I'm a little bit more traditional, like I follow a traditional corporate path, right?
Mm-hmm.
but again, to each their own. So I hope that answers your question around like
No, it
pacing.
does. It does. I think in a way, the reason why I was asking that question is because oftentimes people feel like they need to be at a place by a certain age at a certain time, right? So people, especially women, we think, oh, we need to get married, we need to have kids, we need to do all these things. But what I'm trying to allude to, and you explained it very well, is it doesn't necessarily need to be that. It could just be simply a choice of life, and then sometimes there's also circumstances where the circumstances hasn't allowed that to happen yet, or the career promotion, for example, hasn't happened yet, but it doesn't mean that it's not coming. I think a lot of the stress people have sometimes is this desire of wanting something at that by a certain time. And I think your discussion about being clear in terms of what you want and then slowly working your way towards that is spot on. I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
I think the other thing is the more I talk to folks that are in a similar path and have gone through like like have reached a certain point in their career, a senior level, everyone has like an executive coach. Like everyone's using like some kind of coach. And I feel like they all kind of come to a similar conclusion where they realize making it to that next level is not necessarily going to bring them that much more joy.
Yeah, yeah,
And then they're kind of at this juncture where they're thinking, why did I work so hard to chase something for only going to give me a marginal level of happiness?
yeah.
And so I think that that's why I keep going, like, what is your goal? Like, why are you doing XYZ?
Hmm.
If you're only doing it for money, I'm sorry, like that's not going to help you in the
Yeah,
long run. Like you're probably going to get sick and the stress is going to just eat you up.
yeah.
So I think it's more important like to really find what brings you joy, what brings you fulfillment, if it is in that role. And I think naturally people get rewarded and make it to that next level because
Hmm.
you are delivering more value than you're taking, right?
Right,
That's
right.
something that I had mentioned and but I think as long as you're doing that,
Hmm.
success will come your way.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, the reality of a corporate setting is that sometimes the goalpost moves.
Hmm.
Uh, in the end, I think we need to let go of this feeling of we're owed anything,
Yeah.
right? Like that will actually keep you in a trap.
Hmm.
Whereas when you are coming from a place of like, I'm doing something that I enjoy and doing something I like. And if you feel like there's somewhere else that you could be that will will give you whatever the thing that you're not getting here, or then that should be your signal, your internal signal that says like, well, then maybe you should explore, right?
Absolutely.
Um, yeah.
Well, Jen, I think this has been such a wonderful conversation for a short period of time. I could sit here and talk to you all night and all day. And I want to thank you again for being on the show and sharing your experience and thoughts. Any last words for our listeners? If there's one thing that you could tell them, what would you say?
I think that the one thing that I would really want everybody to take away is especially understanding the audience and what they're going through. I really feel like there's so much power in our own mindset. And when we say something is hard, it will be hard.
Hmm.
Um, so be very mindful about how you frame things. Like when I'm doing something hard on the bike, I tell myself I'm strong and I can
Hmm.
see the numbers. I can actually literally see the numbers jump.
Hmm.
Like when I'm telling myself that I'm powerful, that I can do this, that self-talk, that mindset, it really materializes. And I'm a data person. I look at metrics, right? Um, and so don't underestimate the the power of your mind and the ability for you to heal yourself,
Hmm.
to empower yourself, whatever the situation is. You get to dictate what is the movie that you're the director of your life. What is the movie that you're filming? Is it a horror film? Is it a comedy? Is it romantic, romantic comedy? Whatever it is, like you really control that. And I think when we're empowered to, especially with the words that we speak out loud, and to ourselves and the thoughts that we share to ourselves, I think that can really unlock like this incredible healing. So I hope that that would be the one thing that I share that has worked for me, and I hope it also helps your listeners as well.
Thank you, Jen. Well, again, I'm Amy Trong, your host on Road to Wellness, the podcast. And this is Jennifer Choi. Be well, take care of yourself, and we'll talk to each other again soon.